Hi everyone and welcome back to the subject history of English language. So for this topic and for this session, we're going to be dealing with the form of historical evidences and the surviving historical texts. So before we move on with our topic for today and also our discussion, let me have first this slide. And I know you're very familiar with this trending Twitter of Ella Cruz, which is about, one of the characters in Made in Malacanang. So, according to her tweet, history is like chismes. It is filtered and narrated. So, hindi natin alam what is the real history. So, do you really, agree, with the Twitter post of Ella that history is like chismes? I hope it's not. I hope it's not because to make not that kind of quote and kind of tagging that history is like chismis. Therefore, we'll be going back again with our topic for today, which is about the form of historical evidence and the surviving historical text. So that we'll try to look into the vague agreement that history is like a chismis. Therefore, we need evidences that really something happened with those different evidences. So, according to Christopher Hitchens from The God Is Not Weird, How Religion Poisons Everything, that what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. So, therefore, we really need to have the evidences to make a certain event really valid, reliable, and something believable. So therefore, again, our topic for today will be dealing with the forms of historical evidences and the surviving historical texts from the different years of the history of English language. So let's move on. So we have learned already about the history and the origin of English language, right? But here, for this topic, we're going to be dealing with how the English language evolves through the uh, examples of historical evidence or evidences of text through the different examples of the literary text. So English language courses today had yet to be created as the inhabitants of Britain spoke various dialects of the Celtic language. So during the invasion, the native Britons were driven north and west into the lands now we referred as Scotland and Ireland. So therefore, through that, the spread of English language into as native speakers. Therefore, the word of England and English really originated from the Old English, from the word Englaland, literally meaning the land of the Angles. So, uh, since we have already evidences that really the origin of English really came from the land of the Angles, which is about the British countries. So let's move on. So let's start with the first era of the history of English language. We're into the type of the Old English. Here at the Old English, the most evidence text that we have uh, research is about the Anglo-Saxon runes. So if we're gonna be looking into the sample that we have here, the Anglo-Saxon runes, those are their symbols of trying to give the history of English during the time of Old English. So those are the symbols on how they try to write the words into English. Next one is about the early Old English. Here at early Old English, the notable authors way back in early Old English is Sine Wolf and Adhelm. So here at the Sine Wolf and Adhelm, they have that kind of writing wherein they have a different way of how they write words, and though they have some sort of same pronunciation, but when they were written already, they were different, and most of their well notable evidences are more of symbols. So if we're gonna be really looking into zooming out the example of the literary work of Sine Wolf and Adam, really you're gonna be looking really into the difference of the early Old English. So this is another example of from the early Old English. And I will now be moving on with the early Middle English. Here, this is an example of early Middle English. If we're gonna be looking into their form of writing, it's almost the same, but have a different way of writing in terms of other letters. And if you're gonna be looking it into the other picture of that one, the eta means eight. But if they try to they try to write it as eta. But if they're gonna be pronouncing it, it's like eight, and then they have a different version of EYCTE, like that. So the straight, and then the other one, the high, but it's written like HEH. But in the other forms, they try to write it as AEIGH. So the tie, the height, and like that. So that is one of really the living of the evidences of text or the surviving text way back into the early Middle English. So let's move on. Next one is about the late Middle English. And here at the late Middle English, the Canterbury Tales is very popular during the late Middle English. And Geoffrey Chaucer, as the writer of the Canterbury Tales, is the father of English literature. And they try to use the Chancery English. So you may notice that and also observe that the type of writing way back that into the late Middle English is something like developed already. I mean, better than the early Middle English. So the next one also, moving on, is another era, which is about the early modern English. And one of the well-notable author way back in the early modern English is William Caxton. So if we're gonna be looking at here, there is already like a Gothic style of writing way back into the early modern English. So again, here, from the Geoffrey Chaucer going to the William Caxton at the early modern English. So this is another example of the William Caxton writing. Here also at early modern English, there is already translation of Bible, since there is a spread of Christianity way back into the different countries, from the Spaniards going to the Americans, Britons, and all. Really, the spread of Christianity really influenced also. Were really influenced also. Therefore, for that to be spread really and to be understood by lots of people, therefore, the Bible was translated. So though there are some words that are still using, I mean, the Old English, like the though, the the, and all, and also some other terms, but at least it's easy for the readers to understand the Bible itself. And therefore, Christianity really spread a lot. Okay? So next one is about the writings of actors and playwrights way back and also in early modern English. And one of the well-notable writer way back there is William Shakespeare. So William Shakespeare, it's the same thing with the Bible, and you're gonna be looking into, if you're gonna be looking into the sample of William Shakespeare write-ups or literary works, the Old English are still notable there. However, they have a different kind or a modernized already of English, modern form of English. Though there, if you're gonna be looking into the works of William Shakespeare, really, they're really still using the Old English, but in a way that, in terms of deeper meaning. Okay, so here also in the early modern English, there is a rise of the producing of the other forms of literature, because here at early modern English there is a restoration period. So literature produced in restoration period is also known as the Augustan age, the neoclassical period, the Enlightenment, and then the age of reason. Here at the restoration literature, the English literature written was during the historical period, commonly referred to as the English Restoration. So here at the Restoration age, there is an introduction of the comedy, and also the introduction of poetry, and also the transitional between the neoclassicism and romanticism. So the emotional quality was already present here at the early modern English. So the period also begins with this restoration of the monarchy. Therefore, the king and queen are very distinctively, presented into the restoration or the early modern English. So the two distinct political parties resulted the Whigs and the Tories, about the royal limited royal authority and then the absolute royal authority. So here also, there is a glorious or bloodless revolution. We're talking about the history here because these events that happened during way back then are basically, the theme of the different stories that were spread during that time. Therefore, the type of literature way back there are more of, or the English literature way back then is more of kings and queens and like that. So more of power, of political and all. So Bill of Rights limiting the power of the king. Parliament passed an act forbidding Catholics to rule also. So next one is about also the another eventful history at the Restoration period is about George I of Hanover, Germany, took the throne in 1714, and beginning the rule of the House of Hanover. So here also, since there is a rise of the monarchy, but he was less effective than his father and grandfather, his English was reliable and therefore held responsible for the loss of the American colonies. So why to name it as Augustan and Neoclassical period? So there are similarities in literary history. Most educated people of the time are familiar with the classical works. So they enjoyed allusions to the political connections of the time period and references to the classical characters and themes. So here, there is a page, the age of reason and enlightenment. So therefore, the subject of the discussion or the subject of the literary works and also the topic that they're engaging with are more of science, research, and mathematics. So they believe in vast punishment of God, and the writing or content style are more of scientists spilling into the literature as sentences are shortened and the allusions are extended to metaphor of their predecessors. So there is also a rampant of the theme of superiority of intellect, wherein that the philosophers have claimed that humans have the ability to perfect themselves and the society, and the state has the potential to be an instrument of that progress. So here also, there is an attack of, or the philosophers attack the Christian tradition, the religious persecution, and the championing of idea of religious tolerance. So here also that there is the center of superiority of the intellect as the Enlightenment reaction against traditional authority and ruling of the church into the class. So also here the morality is one of the theme also. So which also engage with the basic goodness of humankind. Therefore, the characters are into farm and more of less violence. Next, also another theme that into as forming as survival text way back into the Restoration period is about the religious belief system, the virtuous living, the perception of a creative but uninvolved God, and also the view of God from the contradictory view of Catholic and Protestant religion. So there is already an emergence of other religion also. Next one is the maintained people spending their time and energy in improving their life, more of happiness, more of contentment, and more of pursuing happiness and liberty. Another one here also at the forming of surviving text here is we do have a different style of rhetoric. Here, there existed two clearly opposing schools of thought concerning rhetoric, wherein the traditions of the Renaissance, the attack of the Aristotle's view, that more of the advocating of linear style is to be engaged. They should be disengaged. So the advocacy of linear style, the embellishment, the scientific and philosophical writings were also present into the Restoration period. So another one is about the literature for appreciation, not just for content but also for beauty. Therefore, rhythmic also into the language. I mean, different types of styles in terms of rhetoric were present also because they are very particular already into the beauty. Next one is about the satire. Satire is about revealing how people and things are not what they seem on the surface, and therefore the use of English language as part of the surviving text is more of ridiculing. Okay. So the next one is satire is also served as the witty way to criticize ideas way back then. So the common satirical technique was to create a character that was a stranger to a country. So therefore, the political people will not understand. I mean, will not literally. I mean, interpret the language itself. So the characteristics of this age is therefore looking more closely at the part they played in the society. The main themes of the neoclassical period were restrained, and therefore each person was expected to do what was proper. So there is very restriction in terms of the use of English language and also with the type of literary. So here there is an imitation of classical form, sophisticated behavior, style is polite, instructive and entertaining, restraint and passion, and the ideas are more of order, logic, accuracy, and correctness. So here, there is also an emphasis of the popular genre of order, reason, etiquette, and therefore there is a domination already of poetry, theatrical, sentimental comedies, and comedies of manners and heroic dramas. So these are the well-notable representative writers way back then. John Milton, Glorious John as Glorious John, the John Dryden as Glorious John, and also their famous works are the following: the My Lord, To My Lord, Chancellor, and the Marriage EMO. And the other is Alexander Pope, is one of the well-notable representative writer way back then also. So for satire, the champion of the period was Jonathan Swift. We really need to take note of the character, I mean the well-notable people way back into the different era so that you will know how they try to put it in style, and not only in style but what are the well-notable theme way back then, and how they try to utilize English language not only for communication but also expressing themselves. So one of the leading pioneers in the development of English novel is Samuel Richardson and Angel Defoe. So they are well notable for the content of works and more of the pamphlets, books, and other writings. So his political writings brought the trouble at times because even spending some time in prison. So here also there is a neoclassical period of literature, and Samuel Johnson has a contribution of the Dictionary of English Language. Although the Oxford English Dictionary eventually replaced it, but Johnson's dictionary was the major accomplishment in the development and the standardization of English. And there you go, the English in the 21st century. This is our time already, wherein these are the well-notable evidences from the J.K. Rowling, Veronica Roth, and then, of course, it's the English language really, I mean, transformed into from stories, going into movies, going into also in the different types of genre, different theme, the societal issues, wherein so much freedom is already in the use of English language. And if you're gonna be looking at it, more of our movies are into English language. And if not into the English language were utilized already in adaptation, in the translation of the different stories around the world. So that would be all, everyone, from for the topic forms of the surviving and historical text. That would be all, everyone. Thank you so much.